Welcome to the battle of the century. It's the VPI Cyclone record cleaning machine versus the Kirmuss restoration process. Viewer discretion is advised. Today's episode was inspired by a conversation that we had online after our last episode, where one of our viewers asked the question, how do you know what product cleans better than another? You can't clean the same record twice. It's an excellent point. Traditionally, the way we've done it is just time, trial and error. We would utilize various processes, various products, and over time you get to understand, some work better than others. We're using our ears here, listening before and after. Of course, we do have a digital microscope where we can look deep into the groove. We can just use our eyes and see what it might be left on the record. The microscope will allow us to look a bit closer, but there are digital microscopes and then there are digital microscopes. They can be had on Amazon for under $100, or they can cost more than a luxury vehicle. Those, the latter, come with software that can actually measure at a micron level any film that's remaining on the vinyl. That's really cool. We do not have access to such a machine, and I'm not sure how we would get access to such a machine. But there's another way of measuring how effective a cleaning process is that we are looking into, and that's the idea of a spectrum or a signal analyzer, where you can measure the output and the frequency response before and after cleaning. So we'll let you know if we're able to acquire the right one of those. One of our longtime viewers suggested that the idea of not being able to clean the same record more than once can be overcome by obtaining multiple discs from the same test pressing, multiple records that were pressed within the same batch. I'm not sure how to do that. If you have a suggestion, comment below, but we're going to look into that because I very much like that idea. The best we can do without having access to test records is a double album, and that's what we're going to do today. This is 1970s, the Wagner album. It's Eugene Normandy. It's a lovely record, by the way. It belonged to my dear departed mother, and it is fairly equally dirty. This is about as close as we can get to testing two different cleaning machines. But it's obviously got two discs in this. We're going to clean the first one utilizing the VPI Cyclone, and the second one utilizing the Kirmuss restoration process. And we'll see which one's best. So let's get to it. Let's clean these records. Okay, first up, the VPI Cyclone. The approach that we're going to take, I think, is the best that we've been able to work out with this suction type machine, and it involves AIVS liquids. And, oh, by the way, thanks to one of our viewers who let me know I've been mispronouncing this. It's not Osage, it's Osage. So thank you for that. We'll use the Osage brushes, and by the way, the company Osage also owns AIVS, and those are the liquids that we'll be using. We're going to start with the number 15 formula as a pre-soak. We'll let it sit on there about 5 minutes or so. Take it off very quickly with almost no agitation. The idea is we want to leave a bit of surfactant on the record for the next step, which is a pure enzymatic soak. We'll let that soak for 5 minutes as well. Then we'll remove that and go to the record cleaning fluid. We're going to use the version that does have some isopropyl alcohol in it. And then, of course, we'll finish with 1 or 2 pure water rinses. So that is the technique for the VPI. We think it's the best one that we have in the studio. So let's get to it. Let's clean this first record. Okay, before we get started on the VPI clean, I wanted you to know that we wanted to give every opportunity to get this record as clean as possible. So we have cleaned all of our brushes. We have 4 different brushes for all 4 stages of the process, and the columns and wands have been cleaned as well. So I think we're ready. Let's get started. As you can see, very little agitation there. We just want the number 15 formula to cover the entirety of the disc, and we're going to let it soak for about 5 minutes, and we'll come back and pull it right off. Okay, the record's been soaking with number 15 formula for about 5 minutes now. Remember, the number 15 is half enzymatic and half record cleaning fluid. That's going to begin to loosen up some of the organic material that is on this record. It's also going to leave behind a surfactant, because the next step, a pure enzymatic, has no surfactant, so we want that to be able to spread across the surface of the vinyl. So no agitation, we're just going to bring it right up and then get our enzymatic solution on there. Let's get to it. You'll notice generally I would have that go around 3 or 4 revolutions, but I'm going to leave that surfactant on there. We don't want to do that for this first step. Pure enzymatic. Right, if we had not done that first step, all of this liquid would be beaded up in the middle of the vinyl surface. But as you can see, it's spread it across nicely. If you get any areas where it's not adhering, go ahead and move it around a bit. But there you go. That's nice coverage for the enzymatic soak. So again, we're going to leave this for 5 minutes, and then we will come back and begin to clean the record with the actual record cleaning fluid. Okay, the enzymatic formula has sat for about 5 minutes, so we're going to pull it straight off, again with no agitation. You can see that time we did let it go a few revolutions. We want to get as much of the liquid off as we can. Next step is the record cleaning fluid. Now we will agitate this liquid, but keep in mind you don't want to go crazy. A very, very light touch is all that's needed. If you start shoving the brush into the vinyl, any debris is going to get pushed deeper into the groove. So light touch is the way to do it. First we'll spread it. Get this brush ready for side 2. And as always, we like the disc ductor velvet lips on either side of that wand's slot. Great with the pure water. You'll see I'm actually going to apply 2 rounds of pure water rinse. Definitely in the can't hurt category there. Very light touch. Side 2. All right. That is about as clean, that is as clean as we can get a record using the VPI Cyclone along with Osage products, the brushes, and AIVS liquids. So let's set this one aside, then we'll set up the Kirmuss and clean the second disc and compare them both. Okay, fellas, time to go through the Kirmuss restoration process. And just like with the VPI, to give every opportunity to get as clean a record as possible, we have put in fresh distilled water, 40 milliliters of 70% isopropyl alcohol. We've degassed it several times. Also took the time to clean the little velvet strips on each one of the inserts there. So let's get it together and we'll clean this record. Best practice for an old record like this is 5-minute intervals, meaning we'll start with, well, first thing we'll do is start with the carbon fiber brush, but then we'll put it into the machine for 5 minutes with none of the compound spray at all. Just give it an initial surface clean, and then we'll begin to apply the compound spray. How many cycles we will go through really depends on what we see, but I'm guessing 4 or 5 is likely what we're to encounter. wiggle there and try to get the excess water off. Also touch it onto the microfiber cloth. Well, I can tell by the way the water is beaded and the lack of sheeting that this record has never been cleaned before and certainly never had any treatment like last applied or anything like that, which is good for us. But first thing we're going to do here is to remove some of the excess water. We don't want to dilute the compound any further. It's already 99% distilled water, and we'd like to keep it at that. Just blot off the large spots of water. With the bunny cloth or any very soft microfiber cloth. We'll hit it with our compound. 3 spots onto the Lazy Susan. We have cleaned this brush, but I'll show you how to do that. Just give it a little spray, very light, and wipe it off on a nice clean cloth. I like to choke up on it a little bit. If you haven't used the Kirmuss process before, you'll want to note that this goat hair application is not about scrubbing or cleaning anything, but rather about applying the compound evenly so as to render the static charge on the disc opposite from that which is in the tank. This allows the cavitation process to be optimized. There's a colorization agent in this compound, kind of a milky gray color. The rate at which it raises and falls along with how the water beads up gives you an indication of how many cycles you need to put this through. Okay, that's the end of our second cycle. We have several more to go. You know, if we wanted to get really particular about it, nothing says you can't clean this in between sides. Okay, we're definitely making progress, but I can tell we're going to need at least a few more cycles. By the way, if your machine ever starts to get warm, you can tell by the lighted different color indicators there. Being in the middle is no problem, but if it ever does start to get warm, simply take the top off and degas it again. And in fact, it doesn't hurt to degas periodically. We want to keep those cavitation bubbles as small as we possibly can. Why don't we go ahead and get this going? And while we're doing that, just take the top off. And degas one more time. The way the color kind of rose and fell is also another indicator of how many more cycles might be required. It's beginning to rise and fall rather rapidly. We're seeing less sheeting of the water and fewer dots of water. What's the word I'm looking for?
Specks.
Specks, dots, beads.
Let's go with that.
Oh, yeah. Now what we'll do is take this optician's cloth, dry off any remaining droplets. This is the carbon fiber, traditional carbon fiber brush that we started the process, but we end with this pad type brush. Very, very fine nap on this. Gets down into the groove. You can use the little handle to sort of knock off any debris. Very nicely made brush, this. Same thing on side two. Now, if we were going to put this away for listening at a later time, I would first take a second goat hair brush, very lightly apply the compound, I mean just a touch of it, and just hit it one last time as a way to render any static neutral. But we're going to do a comparison test now, so we'll put both of these into brand new inner sleeves, high quality inner sleeves, take them down to the stereo, render any static that might be on a neutral in the same manner, and then we'll give them a listen and tell you what we think. Declare a winner, perhaps. We'll see. Okay. Okay, guys, final thoughts and for the record. Well, we put both records through the full process, did the best we could with a VPI and the best we could with the Kirmuss. And after listening to both records, I can say both are extremely effective. There's no doubt about that. But I got to give the edge to the Kirmuss. What was the difference? Well, a few less clicks and pops. We still had some bits in the groove after the VPI process. But frankly, maybe another water rinse would have gotten rid of that. Maybe a second application of the record cleaning fluid. So let's set that aside. The real difference that I hear with the Kirmuss is a quieter background. It sounds almost like it's just a little bit louder, a little bit clearer. So kudos to the Kirmuss. I have to give the nod to Charles Kirmuss and his process. I found it superior to the VPI. Now, am I going to sell the VPI Cyclone? Absolutely not. I think it's an excellent record cleaner, particularly when you find a really, really dirty record. As a pre-cleaning process, I think there's nothing better. Some guys will soak in like Turgiclean and a spin clean, and that's a reasonable approach as well. But when I get a really, really dirty one, I like to clean it with the VPI and then put it through the Kirmuss process. Is that a silly amount of time? Yeah, it absolutely is. But generally reserved for your most treasured recordings, I would say the Kirmuss is. But it did a fantastic job. So there you go, guys. We'll see you at the next record.